Welcome back. So this is session 2, and today we're going to focus on emotion regulation. All right, so this is the emotional guidance scale. This is one of the tools that we use to help us identify what emotion we're feeling in the moment. So it's helpful to have the words on the paper on the screen so that you can just read through it and identify what you're feeling instead of you having to come up with it yourself. So on the left side of the screen, you can see our red emotions. These are energy depleting emotions, those things that feel heavy or they have a weight on you. So some of those would be things like anxious, boredom, discouragement, fear, those sorts of feelings. And on the right side of our screen, we have our green emotions. These are energy renewing. These are the things that make you feel like you can be your best self in the moment. Something to note here is that we as humans default in the red zone. That is naturally how we are wired. So if you think about it, it makes sense because our survival instincts, we need fear, we need anxiety. If we didn't have those things, our human race wouldn't be able to survive for as long as they have. So it's okay to default somewhere in the red, but what we need to learn how to do is how can we actively shift ourselves into a green zone so that we can be our better selves in that moment or just feel a little bit better when we are starting to feel like some of the emotions are draining us a little bit. Okay, so within emotion regulation, one of our biggest powers is the power to choose. So this is a quote from Dr. DeBusk. She is one of the developers of the Path to Green program. And she says, humans have a negativity bias, and we tend to default to the red zone with no skill building required. We don't need to train our minds to get upset at a perceived slight that comes readily. So this is just repeating what I just mentioned before, where as humans, we default in the red zone, and we don't even have to try to do that. We just do it anyways. So it's nothing to feel guilty about or nothing to feel like you should judge yourself for being somewhere in the red zone, because this is how we are wired. She then says we need to train to see the perception for what it is and choose to react in a more skillful way. These skills do not just happen, they require training. Just like training for a new sport or any other new skill, we must learn the skill in practice. So what she's getting at here is that shifting from the red zone to a green zone is not something that's just going to naturally happen. We have to actively do something to shift ourselves. And we have to keep practicing that skill of shifting ourselves from a depleting emotion or that red zone into the green zone, so that the more that we practice and the more that we do it, we'll be able to become more skilled and more resilient when we're facing more stressful situations in the future. Then lastly, she says you have the power to choose moment by moment who and how we want to be in the world. So what she means by that is the emotions do not have this power, this control over you. They are things that you feel, but you have the ability and the power to choose how you want to feel in that moment, so you can actively do something about those heavy things that you are feeling in order to shift yourself into a better feeling or thought or choice. Our next power is the power of emotional resilience. So when we're looking at this graph, you have the red side, which is a state of incoherence, a state of not being in sync. And then you have the green side, which is your state of coherence, where you are more in sync. So what you're looking at is heart rate tracing. So heart rate variability is how much our heart rate is going up or down in a certain period of time. So what we'd like to see is that green state where the heart is going up and down in this really smooth fashion. In this state, our body is in sync with our mental state, with our emotions, and there is just an overall sense of, peace and calm. Versus in the incoherent state, you can see those really jagged red lines of the heart rate and how it changes pretty drastically. So when we're looking at that state, that may be a moment of really intense stress or chronic stress, something where the body is feeling either under attack or it's just not feeling in sync with the emotions or with the mental state. So what I want to point out is that it's completely normal to move in between the incoherent state and the coherent state throughout the day. That's completely normal. What we want to avoid is staying in that incoherent state for a really long period of time. So this is similar to the idea that a little bit of stress is okay, so a little bit of that incoherence is okay, but we don't want to feel chronically stressed where we're sitting in that red zone for a long period of time. The next power is the power to shift and activate. So there are 4 steps of shifting and activating. We start first with focused attention. So this is where you maybe start to feel a little bit unsettled and you take an active moment of checking in with yourself to determine how you're feeling. This is where you would take out that emotional guidance scale and identify where you are on the scale. So you're going to want to just pick one thing. Usually you're feeling a lot of different emotions, but pick whatever the one that is the most powerful thing that you're feeling is at that moment. So maybe, for example, I'm checking in with myself and I feel overwhelmed. So that is my starting point. So for step 2, we're going to release resistance. So this is that conscious understanding of, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed, but I would like to be able to shift into a better space. So I'm going to release some of that heavy weight that it's pulling on me. I don't want to feel that weight anymore. I'd like to shift to something better. So that's that second step of releasing resistance. Now for step 3, this is prioritizing positivity. This is that action state. This is where you are going to do something that allows you to shift from the red zone to the green zone if possible. So this step is very dependent on your personal interest, your personal preferences. The way we are going to teach it is we will guide you through 2 different breathing exercises in the next video so that you could use those at home or in a stressful situation if you'd like to have that be your prioritizing positivity step. But you may find after you do the breathing exercises that it didn't work as well for you as you wanted it to. So that's where you need to think about what's going to work best for you. It may be that you want to call a friend and just chat for 5 minutes. It may be that you want to, step outside and get a little bit of sunlight for a couple minutes. And maybe you need to do some stretching or you'd like to think about a couple things that you're grateful for, or this is the perfect time to use those strengths that we identified in session 1 to see if you can figure out a way to think about your situation and what's putting you in the red in a different light. So is there another perspective you can have using your strengths in order to help get yourself into a better or more of a green zone? So that's that active state. We'll talk a little bit more about this in the next video. Now the 4th step is savor positivity. This has been shown to be the most important step. So once you are able to do something that helps you shift a little bit more towards the green, you want to check back in with that emotional guidance scale and say, okay, where am I now? So maybe before I was overwhelmed and now I feel contentment. And that jump into that green zone is something that you should enjoy, you should appreciate, be proud of yourself for making that change and having power over your emotions in that state. So just that 4th step again is just taking those extra moments to appreciate yourself for doing this thing for you and for allowing yourself to shift into a better state. Now, something I want to note with the emotional guidance scale is you may not always jump from deep into the red, like insecurity, for example. You aren't necessarily going to jump from insecurity to feeling peaceful. What you may do instead is feeling insecure to feeling frustrated. And even though you may still be in the red, this is a continuum. So that jump is still major progress towards the green. And maybe you just need to do a couple more things that can help you shift or help you get a different perspective to get into the green, or even just staying and acknowledging that you got closer to the green will be enough to help you feel a little bit better in that moment. So this is a completely judgment-free zone, and this is very personalized to you. So we're going to work on practicing this in the next video. All right, so thank you for listening to this session. One thing to note is that I have uploaded a version of the emotional guidance scale that you can print or save to your computer. This is a really helpful tool if you want to save it onto your phone, or again, print it out and stick it on your fridge or on your nightstand, somewhere where you can check back in and use it regularly. So hopefully you got something helpful out of this session, and I look forward to talking to you more about how we can actively shift from the red to the green in our next session.